Okay, next lift we want to show you here is the deadlift, basically lifting a weight off the floor. Spotting technique for the deadlift is non-existent, just staying out of the way. If the person needs to drop the weight or bail or get rid of the weight, they simply drop it on the floor. So as far as safety goes, it's a fairly safe lift with regard to being able to lift the weight and not get in a position where you're can damage or injure yourself, with the exception of possibly lower back injuries that can occur through improper form, knee injuries that could occur through improper form, and things like that. So form becomes critical because typically fairly heavy weights are used. It's a lift that we can, as we become stronger, our ability to lift weight in the deadlift becomes greater in a relatively short period of time. So we're going to have Zach begin here with the position to lift the bar off the floor. Anytime we lift the bar off the floor, we want to start in a position where we basically create a checkpoint of conditions that we have, a 6-point checklist that we have to determine that we're in a good starting position. And this is true for a deadlift or any floor lift, anytime we lift the bar off the ground. One of those is a straight back. Now the back can be slightly arched, or straight. We don't want it humped. We don't want a cat back. We can have a slight cow back. We don't want that. Don't even do that. It scares me when you do that. We want a good straight back or a slight arch in the back. We want the head up, the trapezius down and the shoulders back to a degree. We want the feet shoulder width apart, which they are. Notice his foot position. That's most comfortable for him. Some people, they might be a little bit out. Some people might be straight. But whatever is comfortable as far as the foot placement is best for foot placement there. Notice his shoulders are slightly over or in front of the bar. You don't want it much further than that. You certainly don't want it back from that. Right over the top of it, again, creates an appropriate moment arm as far as the levers of his body goes. His head is up. I've been talking long enough that it's gone up and down a few times, but his head is up. His eyes are forward, in line with his body, or it could be slightly raised, but that's not as critical. We used to see a lot of very high flex neck positions. We really don't want that. We want it to be in a good neutral or eyes slightly up position. So the checklist then becomes back is neutral or slightly arched, trapezius relaxed, shoulder blades back. Number 2, the head's in line with the spine and slightly hyperextended or straight. Body weight is balanced on the feet. They're about shoulder width apart in a comfortable foot position. Shoulders are in front of or slightly over the bar, and the eyes are focused and straight ahead. Notice that I have no shoes on Zach because I've found over time in a fairly common, if not extremely common, a good technique in lifting and deadlifting weight or lifting weight off the floor, even in squatting, is to create an environment where we curl our toes in and kind of create an arch in our foot. That puts our feet in line, whereas if we're pushing down in our arch and we deadlift, our knees come together, we try to avoid that. If we're curling our toes in and creating an arch in our foot, it usually creates a good alignment with our knees and the rest of our body, okay? It also causes good flexion throughout that part of the body. If we look at the muscles engaged in a deadlift, it's most of them. Obviously, they're shoulder engaged, mostly statically. All of the back muscles are engaged. The hip muscles, the posterior chain, the quadriceps, the angles of the body engaged, the angle at the knee, the angle at the ankle, and the angle at the hip. And a good hip flexion, appropriate hip flexion, is for the most part what we're looking for, because that drives where the knees will end up, and of course the angle of and the ankles as well. So in a deadlift, what we want to do is keep the bar straight to and close to our body as we can as we lift the weight. Lift it up until we're extended with our shoulders up and back, not hyperextended back, but just up and back. And then again, putting the weight down in a way that doesn't injure ourselves. The most critical aspect or safety aspect of this lift is the lower back. Probably secondary and close behind is the knee. We want to make sure that our knees don't go out in front of our toes, but in line with our toes, creating a good flexion at our hip joint, but a good solid, stable lower back, so we're not lifting with our lower back, we're lifting with our hips, our knees, and our ankles. Those being the angles of flexion. Okay, we'll have Zach go ahead and he can do an overhand grip, under-over grip. I prefer an over-under. He can do whatever grip is best for him. Head up, back straight, and he tightens the weight, and then lifts. So he preloads and lifts the weight, back down. Notice the angle of his back, the solid straight line of the back remains the same. The hips flex, the weight is in front, is over the toes but not in front of them. And as he comes up, he simply straightens those levers or those angles. Notice the weight staying close to his body, his shoulders are up and straight, back down with the weight, that head up, keep a good straight back. Let's see one more time. Up, good flat back, slight arch, back down, good. Okay, critical lift here, similar to the squat, is again that these moment arms are created. If Zach's knees get too far out in front of his toes, and that's about as far as I wanted to go, the moment arm between where the weight is carried and the knee increases the further out it goes, which we want to avoid. If he sticks his butt too far out and he leans back, then the moment arm becomes too great between where the weight is held and the hips here. So if we have the knees in a good position and the right angles here, here, and here, then we end up with good, fairly shorter moment arms because the weight's here, the knees forward, so that is all shifted, the center of gravity is shifted this way, so the moment arm here isn't too long, here isn't too long, and we're in less of a damaging potential for our knees, our hip joints, particularly our lower back as well, because there's still a lot of stress on that lower back, even though we've solidified it and we're maintaining stability in it. Deadlifts, again, a good lift for anything that requires, which most sports skills require, is beginning in a athletic or hip position, knees bent, back straight, shoulders back. That's the hip position in football. That's the batting position in baseball or softball. The defensive position in basketball. Just about any activity that we can think of requires some variation of that position to begin with, that athletic position we call it. Great.